Hey everybody, welcome to another Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and we got a great guest this week. She is a executive career coach and author of Winning the Game of Work. That sounds a lot like playing for a living. That's what we're going to talk with her about. It's Terry McDougall. And if you would like to learn more about her, go to terrybmcdougall.com and we'll talk about some other websites and podcasts and cool things that she does as well. If you'd like to find Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com. You can join the club or take a playful personality quiz, or just generally follow this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen to it. Here we go. All right, Terry, welcome to the podcast. We like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week is brought to you by butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Try that on literally any edible substance. Butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Try it today. So you have a joke. Do you have a favorite joke?
Yes, I do. And I think I should preface this by saying I'm a mom of 3 kids. And my joke is, what do you call a bear with no teeth?
I don't know.
A gummy bear. Ha 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 ha.
Nice. I like that one. All right. Do you know the difference between a hippo and a zippo?
No.
One is very heavy and the other's a little lighter.
I love it.
Nice. All right. So I wanted to ask you first about the book, because that's a very intriguing title. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to this. Tell me about Winning the Game of Work and why you picked game to throw in the title there.
Well, I was always a very ambitious person in my career, and I came into the workplace thinking that, if I kept my head down and nose clean and just worked really hard, that I would get recognized and I would get promoted, much like what happened at school. I was a good student. And I soon found that that was not the formula for getting ahead at work, that there were a lot of other things that went on that influenced the path that you would take to advance. And I didn't know what those were. And I feel like I was very lucky to, at a certain point, actually probably more than once, but have mentors that actually helped pull back the curtain on what was really going on at work and what I could do as an employee to position myself to advance. And so I really look at it like it was a game that I was playing that I didn't know the rules to. And the purpose of my book is to, for many people, pull back the curtain so that they understand these are the rules of this game. And these are some things that you can do if you'd like to advance, which in many cases, it's sort of counterintuitive to what we maybe have brought up to think will get us ahead.
Yeah, I think that's really a lot about what this podcast is about, in a core way of work, for sure. Is that for me, you're right. That kind of myth of what work is that we're all taught in grade school and high school is not true, right? That maybe 100 years ago, if you were really good at following instructions, you could get a factory job and retire with a pension and have a decent life. And that was success for a lot of people who were starving on farms and working really hard to just survive. But in 2020, that stereotype hasn't been updated, that in the modern world with, thinking jobs and computers and not manual labor, those things are totally different. So what would you say are some of the common misconceptions that people have around work?
Well, I think that people think that just by doing what their job description says, that should be enough to be able to advance. And I really try to help people sort of shift the thought process about what they're doing at work. And one thing that I share with my clients is that there's really only 3 ways to add value at work. And that is, you're either helping the company make money, save money, or reduce risk. And anything that you're doing in your job, you should really try to connect to that. Because a lot of times, people will do things like, well, hey, I'll volunteer to plan the birthday parties or whatever. And I'm not saying that there's not value in that, but that's not having a big impact on helping the company make money. And I think that when people start using this as a lens, they can start thinking differently about how they prioritize their work. Because this is another thing that happens a lot, is that people have to-do lists and they treat everything on the to-do list with equal weight. And in today's world, you could probably work 24/7 and never finish everything that's on your list. So if that's the case, what do you choose to work on? And, you know, I've observed this more than once in my career, that, and especially when earlier in my career, before I, you know, sort of understood what was going on around me, is I'd see somebody that in my estimation, I didn't feel like was doing a good job, right? They wouldn't come to meetings, or they wouldn't return phone calls. And then all of a sudden they'd get promoted, and I'd say, what's going on here? They're not a good worker.
Wow.
They're not a quote unquote good worker. But the reality is that they probably were focusing their efforts on the important things that somebody in the organization valued highly, right? And they were not working on things that were lower value work, like calling me back. Yeah. And it's smart. It can be frustrating sometimes if you're working with somebody like that, but the reality is that they were focused on their highest value work and were bringing value to the company, and they were rewarded for that.
Well, that's interesting. You know, I come from a background of sales, and sales is 100% that way. I mean, the top performing salespeople don't work the hardest. They don't make the most calls. They have the biggest clients, or they work smarter and not harder. And yeah, they might be taking Fridays off to play golf instead of showing up to the office. But if they're bringing in the highest and most profitable clients on a regular basis, nobody really cares how they spend their morning or afternoon.
No, I mean, as a marketer, I mean, I was a marketer throughout my whole career before I became a coach. And sometimes, you know, I worked very closely with sales, and sometimes I'd, you know that we sent a certain lead to sales, and I would wonder why they weren't following up on it, right? And I know now that they had like leads that were probably more likely to close, right? So they were going to focus their efforts on things that were going to close, and maybe just work that lead when they had more time.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that comes to mind here for me and my audience is creativity. That's another one of those things, like creativity and innovation, that is hard to measure, but has a huge impact. So you might not be delivering a creative idea every single morning, right? But when you get a really good one, or bring in some sort of innovation to the company that saves them hundreds of thousands of dollars, you don't have to do that too many times. You don't have to do that every morning.
Yeah. And I think that really requires also having the mind space to, you know, to be able to step back and see the bigger picture and come up with those creative ideas. And again, often I think that and I'll say we, because this was certainly me at a certain point in my career, thought that, you know, everything was already defined, and, you know, I just had to do what was on the job description, and I needed to, you know, make the widgets, right? I needed to come in and make more widgets. But the reality is that no, the company's mission is to make a profit. And we might switch away from making widgets and do something else, but, you know, being able to step back and look at the situation differently, and maybe, you know, have the perspective to offer up a new way of doing things that maybe is more efficient or more profitable or helps close business more quickly, that's valuable.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you can only make widgets so fast. So in some professions, like, you know, professional athlete, maybe you can be that much better than everybody else that you can get a huge paycheck and payday. But in most things, not really, right? Like if you said, if we're making widgets on a line, or even if it's fulfilling orders of some kind with your company, no matter what it is, in that existing process, there's only so much better you can do. Like you might be able to be 10% better than somebody else, but you're not going to be 10 times better than somebody else at following the rules.
Right. And there's different ways. If you go back to what I was saying earlier, like how do you help make money, save money, or reduce risk? Well, you know, if you can take that widget and you can enhance it in a way that you can increase the margin that you're selling it for, you know, that's adding value, right? That's helping, you know, increase the amount of money that you're making. If you can recognize that there is a risk there and put a process in place, it's going to reduce that risk, and which in reality is, that's saving money, right? If you're reducing risk, you're potentially saving money. So, and a lot of times when we're caught up in the day to day, we don't see that, right? Because we're sort of in the weeds. And, I use this analogy a lot of times of like, in rugby, you see the people in the scrum, right? Like it's just a mass of humans all centered around the ball. And you really can't get any perspective at all because, it's just a mass of bodies. But, if you're able to sort of step back, like step to the sidelines or even go up in the stands, and then you can see the whole field and you can see like, oh, where could we go? And sometimes it's important to do that. And I think a lot of times people get so caught up in the urgency of, the urgency that they feel to perform, that they don't step back to say, well, what's the important thing that I should be working on? I think they call it the tyranny of the urgent. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. You hit that earlier, which I love too, is right. You can be checking your email all day. I know I have at least enough people that I work with and collaborate with on a regular basis that I could start emailing at 8:00 and not finish until 5 because people start replying to emails and then you're replying to those and then those get responses and other people. And it just kind of generates this busyness cycle that you don't actually do any real work. So I think that's definitely important, but I wanted to switch more maybe to a bigger question because you have some cool side projects. I think, you do the executive recruiting and coaching for your like full-time job, but you also have this marketing podcast and you're writing the book and doing other things maybe that you don't necessarily like need to do. That's not part of your job description. So I'm wondering, like, how do you balance those things maybe and get to interesting side projects? Because I think there is something about that maybe you don't get paid for, or maybe it doesn't necessarily directly add value, but there are important things to do to express your creativity or to find those innovations, to look at things in a different perspective and get outside of stuff.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the creativity. I'm a creative person, and that's why I was drawn to marketing because, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an artist, but I also wanted to be able to make money. And so I thought, like, what's the profession that I can channel my creativity in and get paid for it? And marketing is one of those professions where you can do that. And what I found is that the more that I kind of follow my heart in terms of what seems exciting to me, the more energy that I have and the more connections that I have. And so with the book, it really started off with, when I left my last job, I just was thinking a lot about a lot of lessons that I had learned. And I started a blog and I did that for a couple of years. And then somewhere along the line, somebody said, you probably have enough words for a book. And then I came across a book writing program. So I decided to use the blogs as sort of like the seeds of the book. And it was really out of my desire to share the lessons that I learned. And I actually ended up interviewing a lot of people about their careers too. And, being a coach, I want to help people, right? I want to use my own experience. And also when I encounter people that are frustrated and they've hit an obstacle and they don't know what to do, I really want to help them get past that. I really believe that we all have a lot of potential and we all feel better when we're using our potential. So that was sort of why I decided to do that. And it's also been just a great way for my thoughts to be out in the world without me having to be the one sharing them directly, and that's been really fulfilling to have stuff come back. And then of course, it also opens up a whole world for me to go out on podcasts and talk, when people say, oh, well, she's an author. It just gives me sort of a platform to speak from. And then in terms of the podcast, I've been on a lot of podcasts and I think it's fun. I love talking with people. And I was actually recently talking with one of my clients who is a marketing consultant, and we just got off on this like nerdy tangent that, people who love marketing, so, just weird things that we were talking about, and we both were enjoying the conversation so much. And she mentioned, oh, this would probably make a good podcast. And it just struck me like, well, why not? Why don't I just do it? And it has been so fun. I've only been doing it for about 6 weeks, and have people, now I have people contacting me and saying, hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. I've had so many great conversations. It's just fun. And I think that there's a few benefits to it. I mean, first of all, it's just fun. And I have loved learning about the whole process. Being a marketer, doing all the marketing stuff for it. And then it just gives me a good excuse to reach out to people in my network to, as I think about people that I think are interesting and have good stories. That's been great. And then, of course, I mean, my hope is that people who are in the marketing field, hear me and hear my guests and maybe might want to do business with us. I know that's what Sandler does. I mean, I actually get the Sandler videos. So, yeah.
I mean, I think you hit on a ton of great stuff that we could unpack there, but I thought you said it great. So the question in my mind here next for people maybe that are considering their career is, how do you know whether you need the full-time job and this podcast should be a kind of free like side hustle thing, or just like a hobby? Or how do you know if you have the entrepreneurial bug and it's time to like quit making widgets and go like live your passion and do this 100% of the time? Because I think there are like employees, there's intrapreneurs, people that are creative within an organization, and then the entrepreneurs, which need to really do their own thing, that they're not really going to fit in to something else. But how do you balance or coach people to those things?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I do describe myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, I worked in the corporate world for 30 years, and besides a couple of like freelance gigs in between, like when I was in graduate school and stuff, I was working in companies, and I did really well whenever they were like, okay, there's some greenfield projects, go over there and you just figure it out, right? Like I love that. I'm a very independent thinker and creative, and that's exciting for me. But it was still scary to go out on my own as an entrepreneur. And for me, it wasn't like I went in whole hog from the beginning. I really went in thinking like, okay, this is just going to be sort of a season. And I actually got trained as a coach, and I thought that I'd go and get another full-time job. But just as time went on and I was surrounded by people that were starting businesses, I just decided to do that myself. And when I'm coaching people that are considering it, I would never advise somebody like, yeah, just quit your job, you'll figure it out. I tell people, find people that are doing the things that you think are interesting and interview them. Ask them, what do you like about what you're doing? What do you not like? What's your typical day like? Have you ever seen anybody with my background succeed in doing what you're doing? And one of the lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur is that you can have your vision of where you want your business to be, and I kind of use this analogy of like, okay, Mount Kilimanjaro, like it's a long hike, right? And you can see the top of the mountain. You still have to walk every step. It's not, and there's going to be times whenever you wake up and you're like, wow, the view from here is fantastic. It's so great. I'm loving it. And there's going to be days where you fall off the trail and you're in a ditch and you have to dig yourself out. It's not for the faint-hearted, but I would say it's probably one of the most exciting undertakings that I've ever done. And the good thing is that it's up to me to decide what I want to do. And the bad thing is it's up to me to decide what I want to do and to do it. So. Right.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I hate the quote that like, if you find your passion, you'll never work another day in your life. Well, that's just a blatant lie. That we all have days where it stinks.
Exactly.
It stinks to be living your passion, and you don't want to do it. And you got to take care of, taxes or whatever it is. And so,
or you're
right on there. You have to realize everything.
You're where, I'm sitting in front of the TV with my laptop, returning emails or writing or whatever. I mean, I don't, it's not a 9-to-5 job, but on the other hand, it's my choice, right? If it's a Tuesday and I want to sleep in, I can do that. but I might also be working late that night, right? There's some great things in terms of the freedom, but you still got to get your stuff done.
And then what do you do just for fun? What's a hobby for you, or how do you just play that you're not trying to get paid for or have a career?
Well, my husband and I have, I mean, we always like to do this, but we've been a lot more intentional about it recently, is hiking. There's a lot of forest preserves around where we live, and we've just kind of gotten in the habit on the weekends of, looking up on the map, like, which one do we want to go explore today? So it's been really fun, going through the seasons, because we just sort of got into that. We went away to Michigan in September, and we're doing a lot of hiking there. And it's so funny because my husband was like, I wish we had places like this around us. And I was like, we do. We're surrounded by forest preserves. So we just, said, okay, when we get back on the weekends, we're always going to find some place to hike. So it's been fun.
That's awesome.
Going through the seasons, right? Even in the snowy times, hiking through the forest preserves, it's really a different scene, as the seasons go by. So that's fun. I also am like a little crafty. I like painting and stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun.
Yeah, both of those are great. And I like talking about different types of creativity that I feel like you need some sort of body movement, and that doesn't have to be crazy. Most people think of sports, but any type of running, jumping, biking, hiking, any type of moving your body really helps you get out all that work stress and be healthier and more fit and stuff. So that's great. And then
and a different perspective.
Creativity is great too. Like with the painting is a totally different type of play, which is great.
Yeah. I think that, getting out, even when it's really cold, it just gives you a different perspective, right? If you're feeling like cooped up in the house or feeling the pressures of work or whatever, just getting out into nature just gives you a different perspective and makes you realize, like, okay, I'm part of something so much bigger than just, whatever I'm caught up with in my business.
Is there anything on your fun bucket list that you'd still like to do?
Oh, there's tons of stuff that I would still like to do. I haven't been to Paris, and I really would love to go to Paris. I'd love to go to Italy. I like to travel, but I haven't really traveled. The only place I've been in Europe is London, and I've been to some other places in England, which I'd love to go and explore England more, and Ireland too. But I like to do lots of things. And I'm open to many things. And a lot of times when people ask me that I like become overwhelmed because I don't have just like one thing that I like to do lots of things. I actually haven't been to New Orleans either. And I'd really like to go to New Orleans. That was definitely on the bucket list. And then of course, back in 2005, Katrina hit, and then it wasn't a good place to go for a while, but I just haven't gotten around to going.
And no parades in the last like 12 months.
Yeah, now's not a good time to go.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be able to do that soon. That's great. I don't think we hit the podcast. So what's the name of the podcast? Obviously, people listening to this are podcast listeners. Where can they find it? That stuff.
The podcast is called Marketing Mambo, and I say that's where I chat with marketing movers and shakers from around the globe. And it is on all of the usual places. So, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon. It's pretty much on all of the directories. And actually, it's got its own website too. It's marketingmambo.net.
That's right. I was going to say that, marketingmambo.net. And then Terry B. McDougall. I'm sure you can find links to everything she has going on, and the book there as well, Winning the Game of Work. It is right over her shoulder there twice, so you can make sure you get the right book, Winning the Game of Work. Great stuff. Any other asks of the audience or anything we can do to help you?
Be happy and successful at work. That's my mission, is to help people expand the overlap between professional success and personal happiness. So if you're running into any issues with that and would like a perspective, please reach out to me.
Love it. All right. Now, you don't have to play, but would you like to play or walk away?
I got to play. I'm on the Playful Humans podcast. I have to play.
All right, we're spinning the game wheel, saying which game we are going to play with you today, and you got two truths and a lie. Two truths and a lie. So this is where you share two fun facts about yourself, and then one that is made up, and I'll try and guess which one is which. So I have some for you here. People listening should know by now that I have a radio background, so I've met some famous people. This will probably be hard, but I met Bare Naked Ladies backstage and got to take my picture with them. I drove REO Speedwagon to the airport, and I have Paul Rudd's phone number.
I'm going to say you do not have Paul Rudd's phone number.
Oh, you nailed it. He's from Kansas City, and I have met him as well. But I had to flip him. I had REO Speedwagon's phone number for a while there. I did drive them to the airport and hung out with them all day, drove them to Royal Stadium to sing the national anthem and then to their concert and stuff. It was a great time. But you nailed it. That was really good. All right. What do you got for me?
Okay. I almost drowned swimming with stingrays in the Cayman Islands. I was the Indiana Playground Queen 1971. And I was a USDA pea inspector for a job in college.
Oh my gosh, those are great. I feel like the Playground Queen is true, although I have to be honest, that date sounds a little early to me. But if you threw in the date, I feel like that would have been plausible. And then the other two are really close, but I'm gonna say the stingrays was the lie.
You're right. I did swim with them, and I was worried that I was going to drown, but I didn't.
I'm not a good snorkeler. I don't like. I've tried it plenty of times, and I cannot figure out.
I had a little bit too much. There was too much going on with trying to like float in 20 feet of water and feed stingrays, and they're huge. It was too much. My friend was out there, doing a lot of snorkeling, and I was like, I have to get back on the boat. This is too much for me.
Yeah, well, I'm a big guy too. I'm like 6 foot tall, and I got into some like shallow coral and stuff. And of course, they're like, don't touch the coral, don't break it,
right.
You'll cut yourself. And so I was like freaking out trying to how to move and avoid things and stuff. It was not one of the ways that I like to play. I don't.
Yeah.
But it was great to see, and I'm glad that I did it. But yeah, definitely an interesting experience.
Yeah, I had a good
inspector is a real job. So that's how you learned that jobs following directions are not fun.
USDA.
The USDA.
Yeah,
job.
that was that was some job, I'll tell you. Had to wear a hard hat and a cannery and walk around and actually I was working in the lab too. It's interesting. That's the kind of job that makes you like want to go back and excel at your college studies. I do not want to have to do that full time for sure.
That is awesome. Well, I imagine that you're doing what you want now because you get to choose. But do you have any play role models or maybe career role models, since that's been our conversation today? Like, is there anybody famous or anybody else in your personal life that you were like, man, I think they're really doing it right, and I would want some of that?
I mean, there are some people that I met during my coach training program that I kind of hold up as role models of people that are doing coaching in a really authentic and helpful way, and I think just like in any profession, we all advance in our, the more things that we experience and the more things that we're challenged with, the better that we get, right? It's called experience. And, I definitely go back to some of the training that I got, and, the person that was the main trainer in my program, she shared a lot of experiences from her kind of advancement within the world of coaching. And I think back on that a lot. I should not Oprah or anybody, although Oprah is an inspiration. And I think it's really around her authenticity and the many things that she shared from her life that, you're like, oh, that's painful, right? And you're sharing it publicly. And I think that there's a lot of courage in that. And I think that there also is a lot of encouragement in that for people to say like, oh, wow, I can show up authentically. And I actually really encourage people that I'm working with to get in touch with the things that they want out of life and the things that they want out of their careers, and to have the courage to try to find a place where they can live and work more authentically. Because a lot of times when people come to me, they're very frustrated and they're not necessarily happy. And, you know, there's space for us to live authentically and to make a living. We don't have to sell our soul to make a good living.
Man, I don't think it gets any better than that. So we better stop now. But I totally agree. I think Oprah's positivity and authenticity and the fact that she's still optimistic after all those things that happened to her and as much of the world as she's seen is very impressive. So, Terry, I thank you for being on the podcast. You did it. You made it. TerryBMcDougall.com or check out marketingmambo.net for the podcast. Winning the Game of Work is the book. And if you'd like more information on Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com. You can join the club or take the personality quiz to find out how playful you are. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Give us a thumbs up, comment, recommendations for future guests. And we'll see you next time. Go play, everybody.
Bye.
Don't wait for tomorrow.